Welcome everyone to another workshop here at the test camp. This is TEAS Mathematics, the third of the 4 workshops in this series. Let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Those of you joining us live online, we wish you could be here in person, but you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime, and we'll include as many as possible in the discussions. If you join us directly through the on-demand Test Camp YouTube channel, welcome, and of course you can pause or restart or replay that video anytime. Now during this workshop we're going to discuss the mathematics section of the test. And many of you here today said you've already scheduled this test. Is that right? Can you see by hands, even by back there? How many have already scheduled this test? All right, how many have taken it before one time? Do you mind telling us that? All right, thank you. Got some honest folks here. All right, well we suggest that you train in this order, especially those first two, because the competencies in English language training are helpful when you train for reading. However, you can train in any order, and there are 4 separate tests. You likely know around here our motto: prepare, practice, and then perform. Everyone who successfully completed the training has passed their test, and that's because test taking is a skill that requires practice. You match that with the knowledge, you're sure to pass. So to prepare here at the test camp means to understand both the test and yourself. An honest assessment of how well you know the test content and you know yourself, your testing skills. We start by learning the blueprint. Assessing your knowledge of the blueprint is the first indicator of how well you'll perform on the test. That just makes sense, doesn't it? You need to know the content and the rules of the test before you take it. All right, this also leads to what we call my study plan. Create for yourself a schedule that includes reviewing and studying the test content. Now, this plan will also guide you through the test skills training. Everybody's plan is a little bit different. Now here's an overview of the 4 individual tests in the suggested training order. On test day, however, you can expect to take 2 tests, then a break, then 2 more tests, and the order is likely to be different. Your mathematics test has 34 multiple choice questions, and the time allotted there, as you can see, is 57 minutes. So an average of about 1.5 minutes allotted on each question. Now knowing this helps put you on a pace for success. You decide when to answer a question and when to mark and save a question for the next pass through the test. And that's one of the skills we practice here at the test camp. Yes, a question over here. Thank you. I'll repeat it for the folks listening in on the recording. Yeah, so this is not all one big test where they add up all that time, although it's about 3.5 hours, I guess, but they are individual tests. So yes, you do only get the 57 minutes for this section. That's a great question. Thank you. So our first step then is to identify what types of math questions you can expect to counter on the test. Now, not the questions in terms of their format. We know they're all multiple choice. We're talking about how to identify each math competency on which the questions were built by the test writers. And here's how we isolate each competency on our individual quizzes at the test camp. Because you take quizzes based on each competency, that gives you instant feedback. So it points you in a direction you might want to review and study. So you're going to find on the test information guide that these are the main concepts associated with numbers. Proving your competency with numbers also includes proving your knowledge of place value, rounding, and estimating. So let's take a quick look at a couple of sample questions based on numbers. All right, you can look in the answer set and see it's pretty clear that this is based on numbers because of the fractions, right? Okay, let's look at another example. All right, we got some fractions, we got percent, we even have a decimal in there, so definitely numbers. Can you tell just from the answer set? Sometimes yes. Definitely numbers, and there's dozens of these types of questions in the quizzes over in the training center, so you can test your knowledge on this competency. You're probably going to do pretty good here. Just need a review. The next competency then is algebra, and this might be the easiest concept to identify. It's pretty easy to know when you're looking at an algebra question. Why? Because there's going to be variables. Do you remember those? Or there's going to be equations. All right, here's another example. So you can tell this is algebra, right? This is also an example of a question that you're probably going to mark and save. We'll practice that over at the training center. There's just too many steps to attempt to solve this problem on the first pass. All right, one more. So some algebra questions might require that you create the equation. So this is definitely a question you'd want to mark and save. Too much reading, too many steps. You just don't want to stop your momentum as you work through your test. All right, so again, you can do this over in the training center. Another type of algebra question, though, is one that involves the coordinate plane. Do you remember this from school? Okay, now why did you do a study on the coordinate plane back when you were in school? It's because math explains movement. Let's think about it. If 0 is your starting point there in the middle, what do you need to know to get to the point marked? Well, you need to know your position and then the direction you're going. So you can identify algebra questions by variables and equations, but also by ordered pairs and slope. Remember, ordered pairs was the position and slope was the direction. Okay, it's coming back to you a little bit. Again, there's a quiz designed to test your knowledge on this competency area. You'll be in good shape here. The next competency then is geometry. And if you had to explain geometry to elementary students in just one word, what would you say? The study of, yes, exactly, shapes. All right, so let's look at some sample questions. Here's an answer set right here. Even without the stem, you can see this is a geometry question. All right, here's another sample question. Pretty obvious that this is also a geometry question. Let's take a look at one more. Again, definitely geometry. The next competency is measurement. So if geometry was about shapes, then you can say that measurement is about measuring units. Think about the units being measured, like these. Height, feet, inches, maybe stories of a building, weight, kilograms, grams, pounds, distance. Now, is distance the same as length? Might need to review that a little bit. Speed, rate and time equals distance equals speed. Okay, remember this? All right, so these are all to do with measurement. Here's an example. This is one of those common conversion questions. And here's the more complicated but classic took a trip question. You remember these? Probably one you would want to mark and save. Here's an interesting example of a measurement question, or is it? It's a combination of measurement and geometry. You're asked to measure a shape. So it's probably geometry if you think about it, because you have to know something about the shape. All right, but at least you're tuned in to what the question is asking here. So those are the first 4 competencies. Everybody remembers the 5th competency, I'm sure. Don't say it out loud, but talk about this among yourselves for a couple minutes at the tables. When you get the competency, be ready to explain what types of questions might be included in this next competency. All right, we'll come back and talk about it as a group. For those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts. We're going to include them right up here in the discussion boards. And if you're joining us by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and think about this competency, which, by the way, is data. All right, do you know what test content would be included in data? We'll be here when you restart the video. Every table got this, no problem. The competency is data. You are correct. So here at the test camp, we learned to identify these types of questions very easily because they're usually a report of facts. Remember, geometry was shapes, measurement is unit, data is facts. And here's the first example of a data question that's reporting facts. If it's reporting facts from the past or from the present, then it's reporting statistics. Here's an example of another data question using facts. But in this case, they're making a prediction about the future. So what's that called? Yes, right, probability. All right, many data questions are easy to identify because they include images like graphs, maybe tables or charts. All right, here's another example. And of course, during the training, you're going to learn how to mark and save questions like these on your first pass through the test. Oftentimes, this is where people make mistakes. So these are the best ones to mark and save, come back around to the next time. Okay, another data question is about determining central tendency. Do you remember this? What does this mean in simple terms? What's central? In the middle. Okay, very good. And then tendency? So what tends to be, or find what's in the middle. All right, do you remember these terms? All right, here's an example of a data question related to central tendency. In just a few minutes, we're going to discuss the best resources for reviewing and studying for this test. You just don't have to spend a lot of money on that. So we're going to show you some of the least expensive or inexpensive ways to get those guides. All right, so anyway, that's a brief overview of the competency areas or the types of questions you can expect on this test. How about one more question right over here? Go right ahead. I'll repeat it for those listening to the recording. Yes, the questions are all randomized. They're all mixed together. Even on the quizzes, they're separate. You'll see that in a moment. But yes, on the test, they are put together. Yes, thank you. Good question. All right, what have you heard about the term competitive score? What does that mean, to be competitive? In other words, what do you need to pass, right? All right, I'll repeat your comment for those listening to the recording. Okay, so you've heard that a competitive score depends on where you plan to go to school or where you're taking the test, and that is absolutely correct. 80% is considered competitive for most schools, and certainly is around here at the test camp, and that's why we stay a little bit higher than what most areas would require. Okay, so let's do some math using this example here. How many questions are on the test, did we say? 34. So a competitive score would be how many? Let's do that math. 8 times 3, 24, and plus 2 or so. Let's just round it up, and we're going to say you're going to need 27 correct answers. Now, why is that important? To know that you can answer 7 questions incorrectly and still earn a very competitive score. Yes, that's right, because it's a pass-fail test, so you're not making an A or a B on this. And skilled test takers know the importance of working efficiently, what we call a pace for success. So you'll have an opportunity to practice that skill during the training. The idea is go find your 27, or in your case, probably even less. Okay, so which would you choose? That's the question here. If you were taking the quizzes today, which one would you consider to be the least challenging for you personally, or more challenging? And then how does that affect your approach when you try to review or study for a test like this? Talk it over at your tables, then we'll discuss your preferences as a group. All right, again, thank you to you folks who have joined us live online. We've enjoyed sharing your thoughts during the discussion. Go ahead and tell us what you're thinking here too. And if you're watching this pre-recorded workshop, pause the recording and maybe time now to do a little self-reflection. Which would you choose, and how do you prepare for a standardized test? We'll come back and join us anytime. You can restart the video. We had some interesting discussion about the strategies to review and study up here for a standardized test. I think we can summarize by saying there's no right way for everyone. However, everyone does agree that we do need to review and study a bit. Is that right? Okay. So, to prepare for this test, you join this workshop and you gain knowledge about what to expect. The next way to prepare might be to select the tools or the resources you might need to guarantee your success, right? So where are you going to start there? Okay, well, what they're suggesting to you, the people who have gone before you, they put up these little signs, these little pathways during your test skills training, and they're going to encourage you not to spend a lot of time or money on expensive resources that you just don't need. And commercial webinars are a good example. So avoid paying for free test information, avoid paying for free strategies. You don't want to pay for talk. Expensive tutors and tutoring companies, that might be an option for a more challenging test, but here you're only talking about up through 8th grade math. Overpriced study guides are sold for profit. Have you seen these out here? Yes. So you've seen the study guides. How much do these cost out there? You saw them in a bookstore? Yeah, up to $40, more than $40. Well, many guides are available either free or very inexpensive. I'll show you in just a moment. And of course, the more effective and inexpensive resource is textbooks. And now that you know the competencies being tested, you can use textbooks to review and study the test content if that's what you think you need to do. Over in the training area, you're going to see that My Resources is a place where you can find the most popular and up-to-date tools for your success. Again, many resources here are either free or very inexpensive. I think everything on here, in fact, is free. So instead of investing time and money on resources, the suggestion is invest in yourself. Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence and personal independence. Your pass provides admission to these training areas, like the one you see up there in the top, which is called My Test. This is an activity that lets you check your understanding of the test blueprint and everything we've discussed here today. You can also take a pre-test before the training in the My Test area. This is the test camp problem solving system. Up there in the top, that first step is finding the correct answer. We say, where do you start? You identify the type of question. So you get a lot of practice in doing that, just like we started doing today. Quizzes and tests provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while you're assessing your test content knowledge. Now you'll know where to go and review and study. It makes it a lot more efficient. And the quizzes, like we mentioned before, are based on the competencies. And thanks for that question back there. You're right. On the practice test, everything is combined. And these are all random. So every time you go back and take another practice test, you'll get new questions and different answers. As you complete the training activities, you can also earn points towards a professional test certificate, and that guarantees your success. Then expect to perform with confidence that comes from the knowledge and the skills you earned during the training. All right, so let's get started. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.